Madam, it has been represented to me that you are appalled by my exalted rank. I desire to convey to you officially my assurance that if your hesitation is attributable to this circumstance, it is uncalled for.
Oh, then your lordship is of the opinion that married happiness is not inconsistent with discrepancy in rank.
Oh, I am officially of that opinion.
That the high and the lowly may be truly happy together, provided that they truly love one another.
Madam, I desire to convey to you officially my opinion that love is a platform upon which all ranks meet.
Oh, I thank you, Sir Joseph. I did hesitate, but I will hesitate no longer. He little thinks how eloquently he's pleaded his rival's cause.
Never mind the why and wherefore, love can never reign, and therefore, though his lordship's station's mighty, though stupendous be his brain, though her tastes are mean and blighty, and her fortune poor and slain. Ring the merry bells, and lordship rend the air with warbling wild, for the union of her lordship with a humble captain's child, for a humble captain's daughter,
For a gallant captain's daughter,
And the Lord rules the water.
and the torrent loves the water.
Let me hear with joy be laden, rent of the air above, all the union of the maiden with a man who loves her love. Never mind why and when one love can leather rings and never, though you're not a good relation, in my second scarcely pass, though you occupy a station in the lower middle class. Ring the merry bells and bullshit friend, the air falling one, all the union of the bullshit with a humble captain's child,
for a humble captain's daughter.
For a gallant captain's daughter,
and the Lord rules the water.
and a torrent loves the water.
Let the air with joy be laden, rend the songs the air above, all the union of the maiden with a man who loves her love.
Never mind why and wherefore, love can never reign, and therefore, I admit you to
Ring the merry bells and fortune friend, the air with calling one, for the
captain's daughter.
Or a gallant captain's daughter.
And the Lord rules the water.
The tar across the water. Let's the air with joy belated.
Songs in air above us.
For the Union nominated.
For the Union of my lordship, rang the songs the air above. For the man who owns a love, rang the songs the air above. For the man who owns a love.
Hello, welcome, and thank you for joining us for OMP at Home. I'm Schuyler Kelley, and with me are co-hosts Rachel Pasternak and Brian Smith, as well as 4 original cast members from The Zoo 1994, Jean Gordon Ryon, Julie Ferreira, Nancy Galletto, and Terry Benedict. 2 months ago, OMP had big plans for our first production at our new home at Downtown United Presbyterian Church. We had been going to put on a piece titled Sullivan with Sullivan, The Zoo, and a rarely performed cantata called On Shore and Sea. We hope to finally be able to perform these for you in the winter season of 2021, which would put the show around February. So watch our website and our Facebook page for more information on that. In the meantime, we are pleased to present to you our 1994 production of The Zoo. This production was directed by Byron Wilmot. Stay tuned after the show. We'll take a brief intermission and return for a panel discussion with our cast members here. Now, this is a little bit different for us. There will be no fishbowl as you exit the auditorium. However, this broadcast is coming to you for free, as do all of our other productions. We put these shows on for the enjoyment of our community, and it's all supported by our generous patrons and by donors like you. So if you feel moved to contribute, we would ask you to visit www.off-monroeplayers.org/patrons. That's OFF-MONROE players.org/patrons. I hope you know where your fire exits and bathrooms are. Feel free to turn on any noise-making devices and use flash photography. And without any further ado, I present you The Zoo 1994.
letters with such restrictions. At last I thought I might communicate in prescriptions. I heard whom I adore in token of love were taken. The mixture as before, I trust 'twas nicely shaken. Oh, one day I saw arrive a letter which from her sister implored me to contrive to send to Papa a blister. What joy pervades my heart to see vengeance is now arriving. Scared by the pot with devilish art contriving. Scared by the pot with devilish art contriving. A dose of peppermint I thought might please her rather. I sent it her when I sent the blister for her father. But when I called next day, bad fortune had turned the tables. I much regret to say my boy had switched the labels. And now my friends will see the reason for my emotion. The draft of life for me has turned to a bitter potion. I cannot but suppose what happened. You have a notion. Her father used the dose and Letitia drank the lotion. Her father used the dose and Letitia drank the lotion. And now, let's go back to where we were. And if you please, remove the chair. Again we say forbear. Withdraw the chair. Withdraw the chair.
Young man, I say get out of that. What on earth may you be at? Destroy yourself. You shot, that's right.
A cruel fate. A cruel fate.
Apples, oranges, lemonade, ginger beer, soda water.
That lovely voice I know so well. Its accents tender make my bosom swell with deep emotion. Arrival here.
Thomas dear, Thomas dear.
carnival feet, from the company tart to the kidney pie, I've swallowed as much as I could have I. How Benedict would man his affection prove, that by stopping himself for the sake of his love, with a bottle of pop I quench my thirst, and now will you please, I'm ready to burst. Pray tell me how you find me in this place.
You're better now, as time will show. Your grace is gracious grace.
Your grace?
Your grace is gracious grace.
Discovered? Well, I confess. Yes, I'm a man of hiding grief.
That we all feel, that we all feel.
A member of the aristocracy.
Oh, let us kneel.
They do not kneel in search of virtue. Have I wandered here and found it in this atmosphere?
Oh, let us kneel.
They do not kneel.
Oh, let us kneel.
They do
Let us kneel.
Ladies and gentlemen, accustomed as I am to public
Speaking.
and speaking, I feel no, overwhelmed on this
Occasion.
thank you. And I also feel that my feelings that they
Feel.
thank you. If you could
Feel.
thank you. If you could feel as I feel.
Hear, hear.
Thank you.
Hear, hear.
I thank you.
Hear, hear. We gather from what you have said, that Eliza you fondly adore, that you worship and love her instead of the ladies you worshiped before, that she is the realized dream of your life and whatever her station, by marriage to show your esteem for her virtue and high reputation, for her virtue and high reputation.
Precisely, it was my intention that the sense of my words should be such. Your wonderfully quick comprehension and intelligence pleases me much.
And so, if that be the case, and in states we at last understand, we now will suggest to your grace to offer the lady your hand.
Your wishes with pleasure I meet. Give me time just to change my condition and offer with joy at her feet myself and my due position.
Our wish is delighted to meet. Give him time just to change his condition, and offer with joy and to feet. Be himself and his true proposition. Offer with joy himself and his true proposition.
dresses by the dozens, but they're given me by cousins who have known me ever since I was that high. And the tickets to the play are sent me every day. But I'm sure I never can imagine why. To Greenwich in the season I have been, and for the reason that I did not like me cousin to offend. So I saved his reputation to his very great vexation by driving down to London with his friend. On more than one occasion, after very great persuasion, I have driven down to Richmond with his brother. And once I remember, in the middle of September, to Hampton Court I travelled with another. It is true I went to Dover when the season was just over, but then it was with George, I should say Harry. I mean Charlie. Was it Thomas Polly? Was the only man I ever meant to marry. Well, it might have been the other, or it might have been his brother, but neither would I ever bear to part. But whichever of the two, it really wasn't true that I loved him from the bottom of me heart.
me, recover your surprise. On brown assumes his native guise. Eliza, if you'll marry me, the brownest lady you shall be, that ever London town did see. Eliza, say that you will be the Duchess of Islington.
Stay tuned after a 10-minute intermission, and we'll be back with our panel.
Okay.
And we're back. Hello. I'm here. I'm Schuyler Kelley, here with Rachel Pasternak and Brian Smith, my co-hosts, and 4 original cast members from the production we just watched: Julie Ferreira, Terry Benedict, Jean Gordon Ryon, and Nancy Galletto. Hi, guys.
Hi.
We all watched with the audience. What did you guys think?
It was a blast seeing old familiar faces again.
Had you
Yes.
seen the show in a long time? Ron hadn't seen it in 26 years, literally, like since he had done it. He hadn't seen the show.
Well, I had
Me
seen it
neither.
recently, this spring, over the winter, I guess it was, when we could still all get together.
That's right. Yeah, we all got, before we were planning to put on this show with the cantata I told you about, On Shore and Sea, for the spring production this year, we all got together at Amanda Lobaugh's house and watched, actually.
What fun.
It
I was
pretty-
just watching it, so impressed, as I always was, by Byron's directing. He was just so good at sort of finding the underlying joke or the underlying driving thing in any given number or moment, and then making it so crystal clear on stage, So I just really enjoyed seeing all his little touches.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And he did some of the editing. Didn't he take out bits and do some revisions to the score as well?
I guess that he added there's a song more or less right in the middle where for Letitia, she lists all these animals. I guess that he added that one. I'm not sure.
Oh,
I
I didn't know that.
I was of the impression it was the Fare Thee Well number.
But the reason that I mentioned the other song is, as Amanda Lobaugh said, she could not for the life of her find the lyrics that Byron used. A different set were used when we did the show last time as Psychedelic Zoo. I don't remember, 2012, I think. And she just can't find those lyrics that he used, so that's why I thought it was that one. Maybe he added Fare Thee Well too. Is that? The score was lost for many years. It was rediscovered in the 60s. Was it not? Was Fare Thee Well not a part of it then? Do you know, Brian?
I only know because when we were looking at programming it for the Gilbert and Sullivan Review, the Off-Monroe Review, that I think it was Mary Lubomirsky had said that it was inserted into the scores when Byron did this. So it may have been a number that he had to pluck from another source that actually may have been in the show.
Yeah.
Boy, it seems so integral to the show. I can't imagine.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That's my thinking too on that
Moment
one.
Interesting.
Yeah. But Byron did that with a lot of shows. I mean, I think he did a lot of work on the Grand Duke script when we did that. And I forget.
Utopia.
Utopia. Yeah. He was, of course, he was a great writer in his own right as well. So he had those sort of script instincts that he could bring to bear to great benefit. There were, some moments Gilbert might have thought of that would have been better left unthought. So
Yes.
In the Grand Duke in particular, I suppose.
yes.
Yeah.
But he made that a really cohesive show, which it's not, I think, in its native form. But
I'm really fond of Byron's version of the Grand Duke. We performed that last time. We performed the Grand Duke. We used his edits again.
script.
Yeah.
We've used that one all the time because he did it first, and then I did it the second time, and I used his cutting of that. Now I did Utopia first, and then Byron was in it. He was Mr. Goldberry, and for a Byron story, I had to go on for him because he lost his voice after opening night. I don't remember that. And we had. It was one of those wonderful cast parties. Off-Monroe has these lovely cast parties after every performance. Anyway, opening night was so successful that I didn't get home until 5 a.m. And at 9 a.m. I got a call from Sarah, the costume designer, saying, Byron has lost his voice. You need to come in and take the part.
'Cause I directed,
No
it,
sleep.
so I'm the only one that sort of knew the blocking. So that was interesting. Show must go on, but I met up with Byron after each performance, and he would write notes to me. He go, "Did you do this? Did you do this?"
So this week would be Byron's birthday.
Oh my
that we're
goodness.
talking about him. The 16th would be his birthday.
Oh.
Yeah, 72.
What?
He would have been 72.
God bless him.
For the listeners, Byron passed away in 2014, I believe.
August, yeah.
August.
How did you know it was his birthday?
Because he's 10 years
Because
older
we've
than
known
Mike.
him forever.
Yeah.
So,
Oh.
and I remember things like birthdays.
Uh-huh.
I don't know what I had for dinner last night, but Byron's birthday is May 16th.
Oh.
And Virgil. Oh, go on. Sorry.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, Anne Virgil on the YouTube comments said she believes that Byron actually tracked these lyrics down from a gentleman and solicited them, like got permission to use them. So apparently someone wrote them since the 60s for the animal song. But I'm sorry, I didn't mean to.
No,
That's okay. Watching all of you just watch this production and all of the moments where you were like, oh, remember that. Oh, I remember that. Can you share just a couple of those moments with our friends who were viewing it on YouTube? Because as someone who, I've been with the group 14 years, Schuyler, I think 13 years.
Yeah.
Us newbies still, it's like watching a home movie with people that we know, that we've kind of grown up with. So I know that all of you have these special moments that you've picked out from watching it. So if you could just share with our viewers, that would be great.
I especially enjoy the ensemble stuff. I love the opening. I love he has people moving around and positioned throughout the piece so artfully.
Yeah.
So skillfully.
Yeah, it does. And it is like we grew up together. That's a good way of describing it.
I mean, we all commented on how young we all looked then.
Right.
And okay, it has been, 26 years?
26 years.
And, but yet, so many of us are still connected. We might not see each other a whole lot, but we're still connected.
We've become lifelong friends.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's something I've always felt about the friendships I made at OMP. And even though I might not see people often, it's always just the same when I do.
It is.
So.
Yes.
But I don't remember much about actually being in the show. Watching it was like all a big surprise to me. Yeah, except that I remember that so many of the passages were so operatic, they were so dramatic. And I remember it was so much fun to sing those passages because, I can carry a tune in a large group of loudly singing people, but that's all I can really claim. To stand up there and just, so I was,
let it out.
It was so much fun.
Yeah, it's harder music than a lot of the other GNS. The alto line is not as predictable as it is in so many other shows.
And
I'll vouch for Jean on that one. I remember being in a show with you one time, Jean, and I was standing next to you, and you were just like, and I was like, I don't
losing
hear
herself.
anything coming out of her, but we're acting at the storm.
Hey, that's what's in presentation.
Nancy, I've noticed in chat through one of the people is talking about Bill's suit and then his pants that were very tight. And
they were.
Would you mind sharing the anecdote regarding Bill that you shared earlier, and for a mixed audience?
For a mixed audience. Right. Well, we were rehearsing and Bill did his scene where he gets very sick. And he's very, he was very good at that. And there's this point where he has to lie flat down on his back on a little bench. It's not his whole body. His legs are on the floor, or his feet are on the floor, and the rest of him, he's lying down on the bench. And after rehearsal or in between, we had a break, and Byron came up to Bill and he said, that scene was very good, but there's one problem. And Bill said, what, what am I doing wrong? And Byron said, well, you're going to have to wear an athletic supporter. So he did, and the scene turned out very well. But I'll never forget that.
It's down to the tight pants, I suppose.
Yeah.
We all love Bill, by the way. I feel like making that clear.
Right. Right.
Does he remember that?
He's got a phenomenal memory, so he probably does. Because he was a little self-conscious about it. But it was just one of the many fun things that we all did back then. It was just so much fun. You can't duplicate it.
And how was it performing? It was the second show, I believe, that was done at Salem. So performing in that new space, if you performed in the old one, what was the experience there?
Well, the audience was a lot larger. So that was different. It was just such a much nicer place. It's hard to imagine now when you think of it, but it was so much nicer than what we were used to when we were at Rosedale.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But their entrances and exits seem a lot more professional than we could ever do over at Rosedale, because we could actually go off into, not traipsing through the audience.
Yes.
That was a real plus. The stage was bigger. The acoustics were decent, but parking was much better.
I mean, Rosedale was just such a tiny little hole in the wall.
But I have to speak up for Rosedale. I mean, New Life, that was a wonderful home for us for many years.
I agree.
And we played for an audience of 250 people one night. So
wow,
it wasn't just a little hole in the wall. It was a nice place.
But I mean, compared to Salem, it seemed like it was so small.
Yeah,
definitely smaller.
I liked the intimacy at Rosedale. I mean,
it was intimacy. Yeah,
very close to the show, so you could work. You could. I hate to use the word subtlety, but I mean, you could introduce some subtlety into what you were doing on stage. It didn't all have to be as huge as possible to reach, the back wall. So it was a different type of performing that you had to do in the two places. And I think we were still sort of finding our way and succeeding. I mean, I think, the show looked really, really good, looking at it now from all these years later. But we were still learning how to fill that space. And I think that was something we had to do when we moved into that cavernous gym. I mean, it was just so from being in a place where we could basically reach out and touch the audience at Rosedale.
Yeah.
You're right. Yeah, because the audience seemed like they were right there.
Well, they were. They understood every word.
In our laps, or we were in their laps.
They could see our expressions and
exactly.
Kind of up and personal.
But fortunately, the acoustics were very good at Salem once we got people into it.
Exactly.
But with an empty room, it was kind of echoey, and I remember being nervous about that the first shows that we did.
For the last 5 or 7 years or so, something like that, we actually started putting sound baffles on the wall. We had an audio engineer come in and review the space and put. It seemed to actually help. It helped because our audiences had been shrinking a little. soaking up less of the sound, and so we needed
Yeah.
we needed the extra padding.
Mm-hmm.
Worked out. We left them all. You're welcome, Salem.
I'm sure they'll come to.
So something we have been working on with OMP, because we have been around for 40, what is it, Brian?
43.
3 years, is finding new audiences, making sure that our audiences that have been with us the whole time are still included in, the shows that we continue to put on. It's a limited repertoire that we do have access to as far as musicals, and it's not what we would consider the hip new formula that seems to do well on Broadway. So I'm just wondering if you have thoughts on, what first brought you out to do Gilbert and Sullivan, and what keeps you involved and, in any way, whether it's performing, doing costumes, even just supporting, what is the importance of OMP and Gilbert and Sullivan in the Rochester community?
I'm going to pop in and speak first because I feel very lucky to have worked on stage with Esther Vail. My first show in 1981, I was a very young Duke of Plaza Toro. Opposite Esther is the Duchess. I don't know how many 22-year-olds will be playing that role, but I did. And having only known Pinafore from high school, having played that's why I like Gilbert and Sullivan. That was my introduction. But in Terry, I remember Esther saying to me and many other times, Off-Monroe has fun. First and foremost, we have fun. We're doing good work and we have fun doing it. And then she used that lovely, lovely term, esprit de corps, that we're all in it together. And for me, that's what kept me going with the group and still has me going with the group, even though I started, no, I shouldn't have said 22. I started at the age of 12, pardon me. I'm not that old. So to me, it came from the lips of the founder, Esther Vail. We have fun.
Mm-hmm. I've always been really impressed by the way that Off-Monroe Players continues to attract younger people to come in and do, you wouldn't necessarily think that these, couple of centuries old operettas would be appealing to a younger crowd, but whether it's because once they get inside the door, they fall in love with the music, which I think happens to a lot of people, or whether it's because it's something, you can do. I mean, it certainly what attracted me was when I read that you didn't have to try out to be in the chorus. And I think that also brings people in. But, with so much discussion in arts groups about what are we going to do about this aging audience and these aging participants or whatever, how are we going to pass the baton on? But Off-Monroe Players, for some reason, hasn't had that problem. I mean, it continues, as far as I know, to attract a younger generation every year. And so I think that speaks well for the organization. And I think Off-Monroe Players offers something unique and special to the Rochester community because, first of all, because it is so grassroots community based, more so I think than any other community theater in town. And I think they're very, very good, but they don't have that sort of grassroots. This is growing from the community itself, whatever makeup the community happens to be. And I think that it offers that opportunity, and it offers, for whatever reason, Gilbert and Sullivan still works today, and it keeps Gilbert and Sullivan alive for a lot of people, and Off-Monroe is the only group that is doing that. So I think those two things give Off-Monroe Players a very special place in the Rochester community that is not reduplicated by any other community theater group.
Here, here.
Well said.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Terry,
Yes.
being the charter member from 1977, and you were 2 when it started. What can you say about the first performances for Off-Monroe? Because it's before me, and just the whole that it is to tie into what Jean said about it being grassroots, growing out of the neighborhood around Rosedale and such.
Well, it was utterly grassroots, which is a large part of its charm, I think. Our budgets in the early days were in the low 2 figures, and Esther was very proud of that fact. We'd borrow stuff everywhere we could. And it was the quality of the productions definitely improved as years went on. But we were having so much fun, and we were really proud of what we did on stage, even at the very beginning. I like to say we perform entry-level theater for anyone who wants to participate, but that doesn't mean we're not proud of what we do. And it's just gotten better as the years go by.
Who was in the very first production that any of us would know?
Rob Edwardson, Judy Salter, Malcolm Judd and his wife. She was in Mikado. Yeah.
Who? Oh, and Ted?
No, Ted wasn't in it.
Oh, okay.
Not yet.
We actually don't, other than those you mentioned, we don't know a lot. We don't have a program.
Seriously?
Yeah, we don't have a program for the original trial.
We do have Bella Via part of that, or not yet?
Not yet.
Mike started with Iolanthe.
Yes.
Which was fall of '81. Something like
I believe
that.
so.
Yeah.
So it grew as a grassroots organization starting in 1977. We were incorporated in 1987, and a board was formed, by my understanding, specifically to try to aid in grant writing, make it easier to get grants.
Yeah. If you were a 501c3 organization,
it makes it a lot easier.
Molly Moore was the big push with that. She was on the board at the time. Terry was on the board, I believe, too.
I was.
You were Scott Reeder.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then we at the time had a lawyer, Scott Smith, who did the pro bono work to shepherd the application for nonprofit all the way through the system. So we've been very lucky to have people that have participated. I mean, we've had physicians, we've had nurses, we've had butcher, baker, candlestick maker. We've had them all. And I notice one of the chats says, besides being entry level, having no auditions, the fact that we only rehearse 2 nights a week and allows people to have some lives makes us more attractive than some other theatrical endeavors. But no, that was specifically to grant money, because if you were a recognized organization, you were eligible for state arts funding at the time.
So I wondered if at the time, it being such a grassroots organization and being run as a steering committee, I wondered whether there was any pushback from the membership. Did we not want to? Some of the members not want to incorporate? Were they worried about no? All right. Well, that's very.
I don't remember that. I remember pushback about moving.
Yes, that was the biggest pushback that ever happened at a membership meeting, was moving from a New Life Presbyterian at Rosedale to Salem. I remember that meeting very well, but we won't go into that. It wasn't pretty. It was not pretty. No, it was, but because everyone in that room cared, because we're all a family. Dysfunctional as the way may be, which makes it more of a family, I guess, but no, that was those early years were great, and we had a great run at Salem, and I'm looking forward to seeing what happens in the next 10 years.
2021, yeah. going forward.
And to say about young people, to have Rachel and Schuyler producing this to shepherd us into our next phase is wonderful. Kudos to Schuyler for all this engineering and Rachel for all of the publicity. I for one appreciate it.
Thank you for your support. But.
You make it so easy because you have built this amazing thing and welcomed us into it.
Exactly.
And I say that not trying to be too sentimental, but it's exactly what you said, Brian. You welcomed both of us and everyone else in, and it didn't matter where our comfort level was with performing or where our ability levels lay. Everyone is just welcomed, and it's remarkable. I've worked with a lot of other groups, as have most of you. And it's not always like that. There's sometimes, drama. There's, oh, well, you've never done a show with us. Guess what? You're going to be in the back row. There's just we want to help you if you're interested in directing, producing, anything. That's something that we just, as newer members, just thank you for. And we watch this with such glee and watch you watching it with such, wonderful memories. And we know that doesn't happen all the time. So that was a long-winded way to say thank you.
Suzanne Bell, our OMP's president at the moment, she said on the YouTube chat, "We put the fun in dysfunctional."
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah, and again, harken back to Esther. If we have fun on stage, the audience has fun.
Yes, they can sense it.
And it's that which I think has brought us to where we are and will take us forward.
Very true.
You're here.
Nancy, what was your first show with Off-Monroe?
My first show was Princess Ida.
In
As with Jean.
Princess Ida.
No, I think you said that was the first you saw?
That was the first I was in.
Okay.
It was Princess Ida. I think it was like 1991, I believe. And
earlier than that.
It was 1990.
It was earlier? 1990?
Yes.
Uh-huh. And it was just such a nice experience because everyone, like Rachel said, was so inclusive, and it didn't matter what your capabilities were. Everyone was just welcoming with open arms. And that my first friend I met was Georgiou, because it was also her first show. So we had a lot in common as far as not being used to being in a play or anything, and acting and singing. And it was a great experience.
That for other people, it's Georgiou Kelley Sutliff, who, by the way, has written many, many grants for the organizations over the years, and longtime board member.
Yes.
And then, Jean, you said Ida was the first show you saw.
First show I saw, yeah. I think I was talking about it before the zoo happened today. That I went to see it because I love Princess Ida. I've always loved it, but nobody ever does it.
Did it?
So I thought, well, I'm definitely going to go see this, and I'll be one of 3 people in the audience because I've never heard of this. But I couldn't get in. I got there and the room was packed, and I had to be on a waiting list and sit in another room and wait until they thought they might have one seat open for me. But I remember it was delightful. It was really lovely. I believe Ron was in it, if I'm not mistaken.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yes, he was.
And I remember Jimmy specifically. I remember me as
Hildebrand.
He was Hildebrand. Yeah.
And
so,
I played the shared knockoff, is one of the brothers. I was Eric in that with the black pigtail wig. But
didn't a wig fall off of you or something?
No, I didn't have a wig incident. But do you remember anybody who was in it? Remember the fan in the flapping flags and Byron on his back holding
electric fans.
Electric. To make
in the
banners wave at
little
the end
alleyway behind the stage.
Cole and I were on our backs behind the set with these
Yeah.
electric fans to make the banners wave. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
So funny.
High tech.
It was very effective.
Yeah,
Very
practical
effective.
practical effects.
The first show I was in was Brian's Gondoliers,
Oh,
and
yeah.
Terry was my partner.
Yes. Memorable for me as well.
It was great. It was so much fun, and we had all that dancing. It was wonderful.
Oh, that was the dancing that Valerie fell off the stage.
Oh yeah.
It was during when the gondoliers are leaving after the first section.
Yeah.
And she did the turn and she went down, but she went down and then right around the staircase and back up and joined the next two measures. It was like,
Oh, wow.
but almost hit an audience member in the front row. We were talking about how close we were.
Yes.
That could have been an incident, but
Oh gosh.
Now, Off-Monroe Players has never charged for any of their shows. And the production value that is still achieved by when we don't charge, it's a phenomenal production that people are in for no money. It's pretty remarkable in these times that you get such talent and such effort and such production value for free, right?
Mm-hmm.
Heck yeah.
Yeah, it is remarkable.
I mean,
really
we've always
is.
been lucky. People donate, give things. Maureen Berry, who was an early producer of the shows, oh my gosh, she would ask for everything and get it. But production values. If you notice, most of our early shows, the costumes are pastel. It's because the material was percale sheets.
Yes.
Cast-offs from a hotel, the Americana, which is where College Town is now. And we found out very early, percale does not dye into very strong colors. So we have a lot of mint greens and pinks and yellows and light blues. And for many years, we called it the percale collection. But again, we used little things. I mean, every little scrap we used, the paper plate hats.
The wigs, the Mikado wigs out of tights.
Made out of black tights. Our costume designer, Sarah, she was incredibly resourceful in figuring out how to do these things. And we've never really scrimped, but we've utilized all of the resources available for. Yeah. Everything shows up on stage. Was that Mikado your first show, Julie?
Yeah, the spring of 84. Yeah. And Terry might not realize this, but it's his fault. It's all your fault that I joined the production and married your brother.
Well, we were
the
in
fall
that.
before we had done a production in Henrietta of the Pirates of Penzance with the Henrietta Community Group, whatever it was called then. And they always, I had done a few shows with them in the past, and we had done Pirates. And I don't know how you got into that group, Terry, but I did that show, and that's when Chris Detman, she was also in that performance in Henrietta of Pirates, and that's how we both came to do Off-Monroe in the spring of 84.
That production in Henrietta is,
fault.
well, I happily take the blame. That's the only time I've played a cop in Pirates.
Oh.
It's a lot of fun.
I remember seeing that production because you were in it, Terry. But
do you remember me?
Yes.
Sorry,
of course.
Terry does. I don't. I saw only one performance. So I'm sure it was spectacular.
Yeah.
Yes. No, that was. That was. There were a lot, and since we're telling Bill Hammond stories, that's the one and only time that we have had to cancel a performance. Bill was off playing rugby, and due to a tornado downstate, their little private plane, couldn't make it back. So in the entire history of Off-Monroe Players, that other than this, pandemic that has not allowed us to perform. We had to cancel a performance because he was playing Coco and did not make it back. That was before I would go on with Book in Hand. I directed that, and I don't know why it didn't occur to me to do it. Anyway, but who could replace Bill Hammond?
Well, yeah.
There you are.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And
I
promo
think
for
I
next-
would like to take a little credit too for changing the nature of cast parties when I joined the group.
Really?
Yeah.
Do tell.
Do tell.
Yeah. There was less, cabaret entertainment, shall we say?
We'll just leave it at that.
Yeah. I would like, speaking of that Mikado, the person that played the Mikado in that production was John Selinsky. John Selinsky will be directing the November production of HMS Pinafore.
God willing.
Returned back to the group since the 80s. And we produced a number of his children's plays and his original musical Minstrel, The Story of Stephen Foster.
Yeah.
So I wanted to get that plug in there too.
Also an original board member, in addition to Julie, I believe, a couple others.
Yeah.
Maybe not Julie. It was
I
Patty.
think I was original, but
Oh, you were an original.
I think so.
I think I'm one of those too.
Yes, you are. Yes, you were the president, first president.
Oh, yeah, I've been a couple of times. Yeah.
Yeah. I was president for a while.
Time flies.
Yeah.
In a good way.
Indeed.
I'm
So-
reading the chat as we speak. Dana Paxton, who was the gatekeeper in the zoo, has been watching.
Ah, hey, Dana.
Hi, Dana.
How do you see that?
I've got two windows open on the YouTube chat.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's a live
Dana.
chat going on. So we were talking a little bit about
Dana.
OMP's place in Rochester's theater community. The theater community in Rochester had been growing quite large in 2019. As of 2019, it was very strong, I think. Well, what was it like in 1994? What was the theater community at large like?
It was very strong then. You know.
Really?
Yes.
It was strong, but there weren't so many little groups that sort of were independent groups that possibly broke off from larger groups or just were formed by people who suddenly decided that they'd like to do this. I mean, there were a lot of really strong groups. There was Blackfriars, there was JCC, there was Rochester Community Players, and there was Off-Monroe Players. But shortly, well, it might have been right around 1994, there was this sudden explosion of little groups that were, as I said, offshoots of other groups or just brainchilds of people who decided that, they had a vision. But it was very sudden. It was like it went from 3 or 4 solid, sort of core groups to 95 little groups, with the actors in the community sort of going from group to group, just depending on the project they were interested in doing.
Now, but Off-Monroe was the only group that didn't charge for their performances. Am I correct?
I
think so.
When RCP became Shakespeare Players, or
Right.
Oh, yeah.
Peter Scribner modeled that on OMP, so I don't think they charged at first at that time for their performances. But otherwise, no, I think OMP was probably the only truly free group in town.
Right, because I kind of thought that, we provided decent theater experience, and we were probably the only ones that did it for free.
I think we still are. I don't know anyone. I don't know any other group anywhere that in the United States that does puts on shows.
We're
for free.
unique. Mm-hmm.
There may be a few that we don't know of.
There could be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The summer Shakespeare is free.
Yeah.
They pay.
That's true.
Okay.
That's very true.
Yeah, the other thing we were talking about, free and audiences is today is Mother's Day. Salute to all the mothers
Yes.
out there.
Happy Mother's Day.
Mother's Day
To
historically
all who
had been our biggest audience for
Yes.
our shows because
People took
many
their
children
mothers.
brought their mother to see a
Exactly.
show, and because we do family-friendly entertainment, and the mothers in the cast, there would be a lot of family there, and so it's sort of fun that we're doing this on Mother's Day matinee, and because we'd have a big house right now if we were performing Zoo at Doopsy.
Yes, we would.
It's the only time my mother ever saw me in a show was when it was Mother's Day, and I brought her to. Actually, did she see me? No, it was Thespis I was directing. So it's the only time my mother ever saw an Off-Monroe show. No, I'm sorry. We went on the road with gondoliers in 1981 to the Perry Opera House that burned down in Perry. They had a vaudeville opera house that we went and took the whole show down there. That was one of our on-the-road experiences. Terry, when did
you got paid for that, didn't you?
Oh.
We were
did
supported-
as the benefit for their arts organization down there.
The Wyoming County Arts Council, yes. What were you asking, Brian?
About the opera house down there. Wasn't your parents involved with that?
My father was chairman of the County Arts Council, and that's essentially why we ended up going down there. But it went up in flames not long thereafter.
Yeah,
And,
we did that and Pirates down there, I think, were the two shows.
We did a review, Pinafores and Pirates, I guess it was called, something like that.
Yeah.
I have a recording of that, VHS recording.
I didn't
That
know
was
it
the
existed.
one we did at the
Oh, no. That's something else.
It is, okay.
Yes.
But we did a similar review, yes.
Now, when did the review group start?
89.
Well, Byron started it, and it was about 88, 89.
I remember that I was not part of it then, but your first performance was on the day after my wedding, our wedding. So it was September 24th, 1989.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so.
Wow.
That was one of
so remember I said I remember things that are,
that was
you know,
the
not
performance
important.
at Silver Stadium?
Yeah.
Oh.
Or no, well, yeah, Silver Stadium. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, what a start.
Yeah.
Again, we perform at a place that no longer exists. But the review group is going well, and
yeah.
Well, 2020 notwithstanding so far, but nothing's going well right now for. But
It's wonderful to see how many theater productions are being shown online, and that we would not have the opportunity to see otherwise, whether it's by virtue of that they're so far out of town or they're so prohibitively expensive. But so many wonderful things are being shown online with us, whether it's concerts or shows. So
I would never have put this together if we hadn't had this happen. But
yeah,
I'm glad I did.
Yeah, if it happened 10 years ago, we wouldn't have had some of this technology.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, we would have been really cut off.
I know.
Well, does anyone have anything else to say about the zoo or about 1994? Rochester, OMP.
seems like yesterday, Schuyler.
It seems like yesterday to me, too.
It seemed like yesterday to me until I saw the video, and that was like a foreign country.
I'll still look wonderful.
Well,
but
and I'm glad I met all of you.
Yeah, same here.
Thank you very much for joining us.
Well, thank you, Schuyler and Rachel,
Thank
for
you,
producing
Schuyler.
this wonderful event.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
thank you for the technology.
And thank you, audience members, for joining us. We've been the Off-Monroe Players. This has been the Zoo 1994 and a panel. Have a happy Mother's Day. We'll see you all. We'll see you all around.